A cluster of violet light floated in the highest place, faint halos surrounding it, giving off an air of mystery. Its unique and powerful energy made it the most eye-catching object in the room, as countless gazes were filled with both desire and greed. If it weren't for the calm presence of Song Tai, seated on the auction platform representing a major sect, many in the room might have already lost their reason to greed and attempted to seize the treasure by force. While such things might be rare in the outside world, on the ancient battleground, they were quite normal. Here, as long as your fists were strong enough, you could do whatever you pleased without anyone stopping you. On the auction stage, Song Tai surveyed the restless crowd with a calm expression. After a brief pause, he gestured with his hand, and a sphere of light shot downwards, landing in his palm. As the light dispersed, it revealed a sword, 3 feet long, gleaming with a sharp, blue edge. The first auction item is an Earth-tier spiritual treasure, the Lingfeng sword. Among Earth-tier treasures, this is top tier. Its sharpness is such that even the Nirvana golden body of a cultivator at the 3rd Nirvana stage would not dare to touch it lightly. As Song Tai gripped the sword, primordial energy surged, and a brilliant sword light erupted from its tip, shooting forth like a giant serpent, tearing through the air. The auction platform's large green stone slab was split open with a crisp sound, the cut so smooth it reflected like a mirror. This display of sharpness caused a stir in the audience. The starting price for the Lingfeng sword is 300,000 Nirvana pills, Song Tai said in an even tone as he sheathed the sword. Though Song Tai lacked the flair of a professional auctioneer, the quality of the items for sale kept the crowd excited. So the atmosphere in the auction hall remained unaffected by his calm demeanor. 320,000. The sharpness of the Lingfeng sword far surpassed most Earth-tier treasures, and since a good spiritual weapon gave a clear edge in battle, especially for Nirvana stage cultivators, the bidding began almost immediately after Song Tai's voice faded. 350,000. Lin Dong watched the auction proceed with calm indifference as the bids echoed throughout the hall. His gaze remained focused on the spheres of light floating above Song Tai's head. Though they were sealed and he couldn't see through them, his sharp spiritual energy allowed him to detect differences among them. A few of the spheres gave off subtle, unique fluctuations, setting them apart from the rest. It seemed this auction truly had some valuable items. Brother Lin Dong, if you're aiming for that heaven-tier spiritual treasure, you'd better have at least 5 million Nirvana pills, or you won't even have a chance to bid, Su Kuei remarked as the crowd continued bidding on the Lingfeng sword. 5 million Nirvana pills? That's a lot. Su Ro, standing nearby, was visibly shocked by the number, clearly unused to such vast sums. And that's just the minimum, Su Kuei said with a wry smile. Heaven-tier spiritual treasures are incredibly rare, and now that one's appeared, the major dynasties won't let it go easily. Lin Dong smiled faintly. He didn't have a large stash of Nirvana pills at the moment, as his focus during his time in the ancient battleground hadn't been on acquiring wealth. But even without a large reserve of Nirvana pills, he still had other valuable items, like the strange pills he'd obtained from the ancient treasure vaults. Any one of those could be auctioned off for a hefty amount of Nirvana pills. So even if it came to a bidding war with the major dynasties, Lin Dong felt confident. No matter what, he had to get that heaven-tier spiritual treasure. As Lin Dong and Su Kuei spoke, the first round of bidding had concluded. The Lingfeng sword had been sold to a dynasty for nearly 500,000 Nirvana pills. The subsequent auction items were also impressive Earth-tier spiritual treasures, ranging from offensive to defensive types. One item in particular, the Earthflame Stone, fetched a high price of 800,000 Nirvana pills, causing a stir in the audience. As the auction progressed, the atmosphere grew more intense. However, the 4 great top-tier dynasties and a few other powerful dynasties remained silent, clearly not interested in wasting their resources on these lesser items. Lin Dong, too, showed no sign of being moved by the Earth-tier treasures. He simply sat with his fingers intertwined, waiting patiently for the right item. The next item up for auction is a rather unique spiritual herb, the Balanced Spirit Fruit. Perhaps not many are familiar with it, but its effects are undeniable. During the cultivation of primordial energy, one's power can sometimes become unstable, causing harm to the body. This balanced spirit fruit can restore that balance and prevent such destructive energy surges. On the stage, a small, emerald green fruit appeared in Song Tai's hand, emitting a faint but peculiar energy. Balanced spirit fruit? Lindong was momentarily surprised. He had never heard of such a thing before. So, it does exist after all. My senses weren't wrong. Buy it. With this fruit, Su Ro will be able to control the massive energy inside her. Little Mink's eyes suddenly lit up, clearly having waited for this item to appear. Oh! Lindong blinked, realizing that Little Mink had been waiting for this specific fruit. The balanced spirit fruit isn't that useful to Nirvana stage experts since they only have primordial energy in their bodies. But for those who've reached the life and death profound realm, it's invaluable. Many experts in that realm have perished because they couldn't balance the two opposing energies of life and death, causing their bodies to collapse, Little Mink explained with a grin. If this appeared outside, it'd cause a frenzy among life and death experts. But here, not many understand its true value. Multiple types of energy, huh? Lindong mused, realizing that his own situation was somewhat similar. You won't need it, though. The ancient Shinkuan array in your body is far better than any fruit. You'll see its benefits soon enough, Little Mink said, clicking his tongue in admiration at Lindong's good fortune. Starting bid for the balanced spirit fruit, 1 million Nirvana pills. The crowd was visibly shocked by the high price for such a small spiritual herb. Most people couldn't understand why it was priced so steeply. Song Tai, however, remained unfazed. He knew how rare and valuable the balanced spirit fruit was, but he also understood that its worth would not be fully appreciated by those present, as it wasn't something they could readily use. After several minutes of silence and whispered conversations, Lindong finally made his move. 1.1 million Nirvana pills, he said calmly. Lindong's bid immediately attracted the attention of the entire room. Countless gazes turned toward him, many filled with surprise and amusement. It was clear they viewed him as a fool for throwing away such a large amount of Nirvana pills. Brother Lindong. Next to him, Su Ro's delicate face changed slightly when she heard his bid. She knew Lindong was doing this for her, but the thought of him spending over 1 million Nirvana pills for the balanced spirit fruit filled her with both guilt and a touch of warmth. Even Song Tai on the auction stage was briefly startled by the sudden bid. He glanced at Lindong, surprise flashing in his eyes. After Lindong's bid, a silence fell over the room. No one else raised the price, clearly unwilling to follow what they thought was a reckless act. Seeing this, Lindong smiled, about to speak, when a cold voice came from the front. 1.2 million Nirvana pills. The speaker was none other than Feng Tsong from the Stormcloud dynasty. After bidding, Feng Tsong slightly turned his head, his gaze sweeping over Lindong with a mocking smirk, as if ridiculing him. Lindong's eyes narrowed as he stared at Feng Tsong, the intruder in this bidding war. His initial flicker of anger gradually subsided, and he responded calmly, 1.5 million, 1.7 million, Feng Tsong said lazily. Although he had planned to deal with Lindong and his companions after obtaining the Heaven-tier spiritual treasure, toying with him beforehand seemed like an entertaining diversion. 2 million, Lindong said, raising the stakes again. Brother Lindong. Su Ro's large eyes began to mist over with worry. She cast a hateful glance at Feng Tsong, frustrated by his interference. If Su Kuei hadn't stopped her, she might have already begged Lindong to give up this pointless struggle. Don't worry. Buying the balanced spirit fruit for 2 million Nirvana pills isn't a bad deal, Little Mink said softly. But his handsome face showed clear displeasure. Feng Tsong's actions were undeniably despicable. Haha, well, it seems the one who inherited the 4 grand profound sex legacy has deep pockets. Since you want it so much, it's yours. Feng Tsong finally laughed lightly after driving the price to 2 million. He glanced at Lindong with a smirk and waved his hand dismissively. Lindong gazed at Feng Tsong for a moment, then let out a soft chuckle. A cosmic bag slipped from his sleeve and flew towards Song Tai on the auction platform. Song Tai took a quick look at its contents, nodded slightly, and with a flick of his finger, the balanced spirit fruit shot toward Lindong, who quickly secured it. That guy is so mean. Even after Lin Dong calmly sat back down with the fruit, Su Ro was still pouting angrily, clearly upset that Feng Song's meddling had cost Lin Dong an extra million nirvana pills. "Don't worry, he'll pay for it with interest," Lin Dong said with a slight smile. But beneath that smile, there was a cold edge. Feng Song's deliberate interference had indeed angered him. The gazes in the auction hall slowly shifted away from Lin Dong. Everyone had seen that Feng Song of the Stormcloud dynasty had intentionally driven up the price, aiming to make Lin Dong pay more. It was clear to most that Lin Dong had suffered a small loss in this exchange. 1,000,000 nirvana pills was not a small sum for many people. In the front row, Mu Lin of the Solitary Moon dynasty watched the scene unfold. He was somewhat impressed by Lin Dong's ability to maintain his composure. He found himself thinking more highly of Lin Dong. "Angering Lin Dong like that may not be wise," Mu Lin said with a soft chuckle. "Do you really think Lin Dong and his group could pose a threat to the Stormcloud dynasty?" Mu Hanyue, who was standing beside him, raised an eyebrow. Though she had never underestimated Lin Dong, their opponent this time was the Stormcloud dynasty, a force that had even caused their Solitary Moon dynasty trouble. Who knows how things will turn out in the end? You've met Lin Dong before, so you should understand that he's not a reckless person. If he dares to confront the Stormcloud dynasty in such a public setting, do you really believe he has no capability? Mu Lin replied with a smile. Mu Hanyue was momentarily stunned. Then her beautiful eyes drifted toward Lin Dong again. After securing the balanced spirit fruit, Lin Dong had closed his eyes and rested as though nothing had happened. His calm expression made it seem as if he hadn't just suffered a loss. "Just watch, things are about to get interesting," Mu Lin said with a light laugh as he glanced at Feng Song, who still wore a mocking grin. The excitement surrounding the balanced spirit fruit gradually died down, and Song Tai shifted his gaze away from Lin Dong as he continued with the auction. The next item up for auction was a low-tier spirit martial art. For the majority of the experts present, this was highly tempting, and the bidding quickly escalated to a price of 1.5 million nirvana pills. However, Lin Dong had little interest in such lower-tier martial arts, so he made no move to join the bidding. But just because he wasn't interested didn't mean others weren't. Despite the many treasures scattered across the ancient battleground, they were still few compared to the number of people seeking them. The chance to acquire something as valuable as a spirit martial art was not to be missed. 1.6 million. 1.8 million. Lin Dong watched as the auction heated up. Many experts were red-faced from competing, a clear sign of the powerful allure of spirit martial arts. In just a few minutes, the price of the low-tier martial art had already soared to 2 million nirvana pills. After a fierce round of bidding, the low-tier spirit martial art was finally sold for 2.3 million nirvana pills to a high-ranking dynasty that had been the most aggressive in the competition. This brought a slight reduction in the auction's intensity, but everyone knew that as the remaining items became rarer, the atmosphere would only grow more heated. The next few items were also spirit martial arts, but the quality steadily increased, with the prices climbing from the initial 1.5 million to as much as 2.5 million. Lin Dong's second bid was for a mid-tier spirit martial art known as the Wild Bull Savage Force. The bidding for this technique reached a high of 2.8 million nirvana pills, a price that deterred many potential buyers. Though the price was steep, the number of interested parties was still significant. However, when Lin Dong raised the bid to 3.5 million, all competitors withdrew, not willing to continue. The auction hall fell into complete silence, and Lin Dong smiled as if he was confident the technique was now his. But just as his smile appeared, a cold voice echoed from the front again. 3.8 million. All eyes instantly shifted to the speaker, and a peculiar expression spread across the crowd's faces. Sympathy filled their gazes as they looked at Lin Dong. For the bidder was once again Feng Song from the Stormcloud dynasty. It was clear that Feng Song had decided to continue messing with Lin Dong. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Dong's expression darkened slightly. Without hesitation, he replied coldly, 4 million. 4.5 million, Feng Song countered, his face filled with mockery. The auction hall grew noticeably quieter as some people shook their heads in private. Being toyed with like this, Lin Dong was surely at his breaking point, and his rage was likely close to erupting. Many pairs of eyes focused on Lin Dong, but just at that moment, a mocking smile appeared on his previously darkened face. If you want it, take it. I was just casually raising the bid. The entire room burst into an uproar. Those who had been pitying Lin Dong were now left utterly speechless. Only then did they realize Lin Dong had been deliberately luring Feng Tsang into bidding. The smirk on Feng Tsang's face disappeared as his expression turned icy. His pale face twisted into a dark scowl as he glared at Lin Dong. After a moment, he let out a cold laugh. You've got guts, kid. Even Feng Tsang hadn't expected that Lin Dong would dare to turn the tables on him. Time to pay up, Lin Dong said lazily, stretching as he leaned back in his chair. Feng Tsang's face twitched, but under Song Tai's watchful gaze from the auction platform, he had no choice but to swallow his frustration. Not wanting to be thrown out of the auction, he reluctantly produced a cosmic bag and tossed it toward the stage. Spending such a large sum on a mid-tier spirit martial art that he didn't even need was a huge loss. More importantly, losing that many nirvana pills would weaken his ability to compete for the more important items later in the auction against the other powerful dynasties. Song Tai on the stage found the scene amusing. Glancing toward Lin Dong, he thought the young man quite daring, as he had successfully played Feng Tsang for a fool. Interesting fellow. Mu Lin from the Solitary Moon dynasty also chuckled, shaking his head slightly. He hadn't expected Lin Dong to turn the situation around so quickly, making Feng Tsang pay for his earlier interference. This little episode became the talk of the auction hall. Many people cast curious glances at Lin Dong. The Stormcloud dynasty had always been domineering in Myriad Elephant City, so seeing them suffer such a loss was oddly satisfying for many. After the brief distraction, the auction continued. While mid-tier spirit martial arts appeared occasionally, Lin Dong did not see the high-tier techniques he had anticipated. After some thought, he realized that high-tier spirit martial arts were incredibly rare. Even if someone possessed one, they would never put it up for auction. As the auction proceeded and more items were successfully sold, the number of light clusters floating above Song Tai's head gradually decreased until only 2 remained. Countless greedy gazes converged on these last 2 light clusters. Everyone knew that the real highlight of the auction was still to come. Song Tai looked up at the remaining 2 clusters, a rare gleam of excitement flashing across his otherwise calm face. With a wave of his hand, one of the clusters descended slowly. As it fell, the cluster suddenly expanded, transforming into a massive object that landed heavily on the auction stage. All eyes immediately shifted toward the stage, and the crowd was struck dumb with shock. The item that had appeared was an enormous, snow-white beast corpse. The corpse was bizarre, consisting only of a single colossal leg. Its white bones radiated an ancient, primal aura. Faintly, the leg seemed to contain the strength to support the heavens and earth. What is that? Lin Dong stared in surprise at the ancient beast's remains, which consisted only of a single leg. Primeval divine bull, little Mink murmured, a rare expression of surprise on his handsome face. Primeval divine bull? Heh, this is a real treasure. There's still ancient blood flowing within this beast's remains. If you can obtain it, the next time you summon the ancient sky crocodile, its power will be strong enough to crush the Stormcloud dynasty, little Mink said with a sly grin. Oh! Lin Dong's eyes lit up instantly. He had already used the ancient blood heat obtained from the ancient treasure vault to summon the ancient sky crocodile once, which meant that card could no longer be played. But if he could acquire the primeval divine bull's remains, his trump card would immediately become even more powerful. The massive, snow-white beast corpse stood tall on the auction stage, radiating waves of primal energy, thickening the very air around it. This sight caused many to turn pale. After all, this was merely a beast's corpse, yet it exuded such overwhelming power. One could only imagine how terrifying and invincible this beast must have been when it was alive. The crowd murmured amongst themselves, their gazes locked on the stage. Even though many didn't recognize what kind of beast this was, the sheer aura of the remains was enough to make them realize its extraordinary nature. This is the primeval divine bull, an ancient exotic beast. Its body still contains traces of ancient blood, making it a rare item for body refining. If used to create a beast puppet, it would be an exceptional material, Song Tai announced, his gaze filled with awe as it lingered on the massive corpse. The starting price is 4 million Nirvana pills. The moment those words left Song Tai's mouth, the room went silent. 4 million Nirvana pills was no small sum, even for some of the higher-ranked dynasties. If it had been for a high-tier spirit martial art, perhaps they would grit their teeth and bid. But to spend that much on a mere beast corpse, no matter how powerful, seemed like a tough decision for most. For million, that's not a low price, Lin Dong muttered, frowning. Even he felt it was a bit steep to spend that much on a corpse. It's not unreasonable, Little Mink said with a faint smile. The primeval divine bull has a very strong physical body. Once you extract the ancient blood, I can use its bones to enhance the blood spirit puppet you already own. Its rank will definitely increase. Hearing that the corpse could be used to strengthen his blood spirit puppet, Lin Dong felt slightly more balanced. If nothing else, he could recover some of the value from this hefty investment. But Lin Dong understood that even if he couldn't recover all of the cost, just the ancient blood within the corpse was worth the price. His ability to summon the ancient sky crocodile had been one of his strongest trump cards, but he had been forced to use up all his ancient blood during his battle against Tianjin and his allies in the ancient treasure vault. Without ancient blood for sacrifice, the ancient sky crocodile could no longer be summoned, rendering that trump card useless. With the 100 Dynasty War looming, a battleground filled with geniuses and monstrous talents, Lin Dong couldn't guarantee smooth sailing. Acquiring the primeval divine bull's ancient blood would be an enormous advantage, one he simply couldn't afford to pass up. Whispers rippled through the auction hall, even from the 4 super dynasties at the front, their brows furrowing. The primeval divine bull's remains were tempting, but the price seemed a bit steep for them as well. Song Tai remained calm as he gazed down at the auction hall, not pushing for higher bids. He knew that if this beast corpse were sold to a sect specializing in puppet crafting, it would easily fetch more than double the starting price. Auctioning it here seemed like a waste. After a few minutes of silence, a high-ranking dynasty hesitantly raised their bid, 4.1 million. The bidder's face betrayed their inner turmoil, as if they had only made the decision after much internal struggle. All eyes turned toward the bidder, many looking at them as if they were a fool throwing away their fortune. The bidder's expression showed signs of regret. They had just bid almost everything they had. 4.5 million. Suddenly, a calm voice echoed through the hall, and the crowd's gaze shifted toward Lin Dong, stunned. What was this guy up to now? Lin Dong leaned casually against his chair, unfazed by the attention, his eyes half closed, leaving everyone wondering what he was thinking. Is he trying to bait the Stormcloud dynasty again? People whispered among themselves, glancing at Feng Tsang from the Stormcloud dynasty. Feng Tsang's face darkened as he weighed his options. Had it not been for the earlier loss, he would have gladly played along. But having been bitten once, he was now twice shy. After all, 4.5 million Nirvana pills was no small number. Next to Feng Tsang, Meng Lai's expression soured. After a moment, he leaned over and whispered, "Let's not bother with this. The real prize is still ahead. Wasting our resources here could weaken us when it comes time to bid for the heaven-tier spiritual treasure. Once we have that in hand, we'll make Lin Dong suffer." Feng Tsang exhaled deeply, his face grim as he nodded in agreement. In the auction hall, the crowd noticed that Feng Tsang remained silent and made no further moves, prompting a sigh of relief. It seemed Lin Dong had managed to scare him off. The bidder who had offered 4.1 million looked visibly relieved when Lin Dong entered the fray. Instead of being angry, they plopped back down in their seat with a look of sheer relief. They had already pushed themselves to the limit and couldn't afford to compete with Lin Dong. Seeing the bidder sit down, Lin Dong internally breathed a sigh of relief. The total Nirvana pills he had on hand amounted to exactly 4.5 million, and a large portion of that had come from Xiao Yan's gains in the White Tiger Hall. While Lin Dong had a stash of rare spiritual pills that he could exchange for more Nirvana pills, those were reserved for the upcoming battle over the heaven-tier spiritual treasure. He had no intention of revealing his full hand this early. As Lin Dong waited, a bit tense, the murmurs in the auction hall continued, but no one else placed a bid. Seeing this, Song Tai finally shook his head, smiling slightly as he cast an appreciative glance at Lin Dong. It seemed this young man had a sharp eye for hidden value. 4.5 million. The primeval divine bull is sold, Song Tai declared, bringing the auction to a close. Lin Dong felt the weight lift from his shoulders as he stood and casually tossed a cosmic bag containing all his nirvana pills onto the auction stage. The crowd watched as Lin Dong handed over the bag, noticing the hint of satisfaction on his face. Many were taken aback. It appeared Lin Dong was genuinely interested in acquiring the primeval divine bull's remains and wasn't just trying to mess with Feng Tsang again. Feng Tsang, who had also been observing Lin Dong, noticed the expression on Lin Dong's face and felt a wave of frustration rise in his chest. This bastard dared to mock him again and again. Not far away, Mu Lin and the others watched the scene with great interest. When they saw the darkened expression on Feng Tsang's face, a flicker of satisfaction flashed in their hearts. It was rare to witness such a sight. On the auction stage, Song Tai received the cosmic bag with a casual glance, nodded slightly, and waved his sleeve. A massive carcass of the primeval divine bull flew out, casting a large shadow as it hurtled towards Lin Dong. The beast's carcass was enormous and exceedingly heavy. Even while still in midair, it compressed the atmosphere, causing the skin of many spectators to sting. Boom! Just as the carcass was about to crash down, Little Yin, who sat beside Lin Dong, suddenly stood up. He extended one arm and, with an astonishing display of strength, caught the gigantic beast's carcass in midair. His body didn't budge an inch, like a colossus holding up the heavens. This sight made many people blink in disbelief. Lin Dong, smiling, waved his hand and tucked the carcass into his cosmic bag, then clasped his hands in respect towards Song Tai on the auction platform before sitting back down. Song Tai's eyes flashed with surprise as he watched Little Yin catch the carcass with one hand. His gaze swept over Lin Dong and his companions. Though these three weren't from a super dynasty, their aura and presence were on par with those who were. It seemed this ancient battleground had attracted quite a few remarkable individuals. With the successful auction of the primeval divine bull's carcass, an eerie tension began to permeate the crowd. Fiery, nearly scalding gazes, filled with greed and anticipation, locked onto the auction stage, all converging on a single purple orb of light. This was the true grand finale of the Myriad Elephant City auction, a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. As the atmosphere grew thicker with excitement, a hint of a smile appeared on Song Tai's usually calm face. Even he couldn't help but feel a bit of heat from this item. A heaven-tier spiritual treasure was something that even he found extraordinary. Everyone, Song Tai's voice rang out, confirming the crowd's suspicions. Next, we present the final item of this auction. As many of you already know, this is indeed a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. His words sent ripples of excitement through the crowd. Even the four super dynasties, which had remained composed up until now, showed signs of eagerness as their gazes intensified. The purple orb descended slowly, landing in Song Tai's hands. As the purple light dimmed, it revealed a black iron seal under the rapt attention of countless onlookers. It was a simple, ancient-looking seal, its black surface etched with mysterious runes. Atop the seal was a coiling black dragon, its head raised in a roar towards the heavens, emanating an aura that seemed to shake both heaven and earth. This, Song Tai announced, his voice tinged with excitement, is our final auction item, the Black Dragon Roaring Heaven Seal, a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. His heated words ignited the auction hall, sending the atmosphere into a fever pitch. The black iron seal, no larger than the size of a palm, floated quietly in Song Tai's hand. The coiled black dragon shimmered with an eerie light, and from its open mouth, it seemed as though an invisible dragon's roar echoed, causing the space around it to solidify. Every gaze in the auction hall was now fixed on that black iron seal, eyes burning with greed and desire, as if their mere stares could melt it. So this is a heaven-tier spiritual treasure, Lin Dong muttered, his gaze locked onto the black iron seal, a serious expression crossing his face. He could sense a faint, yet overwhelming, power radiating from it. That power far surpassed anything an Earth-tier spiritual treasure could offer. In the front row, the leaders of the 4 super dynasties involuntarily leaned forward, their faces filled with undisguised desire for this heaven-tier spiritual treasure. The Black Dragon Roaring Heaven Seal, a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. The starting price is 8 million. Song Tai's gaze left the black iron seal in his hand and slowly swept over the vast auction hall. He paused briefly before calmly announcing the price. 8 million. An astronomical sum, but no one in the crowd gasped in shock. A heaven-tier spiritual treasure was well worth that value. 8 million, huh? Lin Dong whispered to himself. The price wasn't too high, but as the bidding escalated, it would surely skyrocket. Such an enormous sum would likely put pressure on even the super dynasties. Now, thinking about the great Yin dynasty's Lin clan's financial reserves, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a little pity. His own wealth alone now likely surpassed that of the entire Lin clan. Given his current level of strength, if Lin Dong were to return to the great Yin dynasty, it would be nearly impossible to find anyone stronger than him. In just 1 year of cultivation, he had already surpassed the limits of what the great Yin dynasty could offer. The price of 8 million nirvana pills immediately eliminated over 90% of those who had their sights set on the heaven-tier spiritual treasure. No matter how much they desired it, the harsh reality was that they simply lacked the qualifications or the courage to compete with these super dynasties. 8,500,000. The 4 super dynasties had clearly been waiting for this heaven-tier treasure for a long time. So, shortly after Song Tai's announcement, Feng Song was the first to make a bid. His sharp eyes swept across the room as if to declare that anyone who dared challenge him would become an enemy of the Stormcloud dynasty. 9 million. Of course, his domineering attitude might have been intimidating to ordinary contenders, but it had no effect on the other super dynasties. Immediately after his bid, Mu Lin of the Solitary Moon dynasty let out a cold chuckle as he raised the price. Feng Song's eyes grew cold as he shot a vicious glare at Mu Lin. However, Mu Lin simply responded with a faint smile, entirely unfazed by the chilling gaze. Haha, since the two of you are fighting so fiercely, I might as well join the fray on behalf of the Blazing Fire dynasty. A nearby shirtless man, his back tattooed with flames, laughed heartily and waved his hand. 9,500,000. In the auction hall, many onlookers watched in disbelief as the price rapidly approached the 10 million mark. Their eyelids twitched. Such an enormous sum could only be afforded by these super dynasties. Lin Dong quietly observed the bidding war without making a move, though he couldn't help but feel a bit wistful. 9,500,000 nirvana pills. In the Great Yin dynasty, even if the 4 great clans pooled their resources, they might still struggle to gather such a vast amount. 10 million. The bid that finally pushed the price to the 10 million mark came from none other than the Forest dynasty, one of the 4 super dynasties. It seemed that the 4 super dynasties were gearing up for a full-blown battle of wealth. As the price settled at 10 million nirvana pills, Feng Song's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold glint flashed across them. He slowly stood up, turned to Mu Lin and the others, and sneered, "I don't have the time to play games with you. I know exactly how deep your pockets go. Your Solitary Moon dynasty can probably only muster about 16 million nirvana pills, right?" Mu Lin's face darkened as Feng Song exposed the limit of his financial resources. Clearly, he hadn't expected Feng Song to have such intimate knowledge of their funds. In the Blazing Fire dynasty, you can gather about 15 million, correct? Feng Song turned and sneered at Mo Fawn of the Blazing Fire dynasty. Mo Fawn's face twitched, his eyes flickering with cold anger. "Seems like you've planted spies around us, haven't you? Even the Forest dynasty can only come up with 15 million. The leader of the Forest dynasty, Wu Tuo, stroked his chin as he glanced at Feng Song, a strange look flashing in his eyes. All eyes in the auction hall were now locked onto this scene, watching the astonishing battle of wealth between the 4 super dynasties. Hearing numbers in the tens of millions of nirvana pills was enough to make the spectators' hearts race. "Since I know your limits, there's no point in dragging this out any longer." Feng Song grinned, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Then, He looked towards Song Tai on the auction stage and said calmly, 17 million. Boom. Feng Song's words swept through the auction hall like a storm, leaving everyone stunned. No one had expected him to so boldly raise the price by 7 million in one go. This bid brought the price of the Heaven-tier spiritual treasure to an astronomical 17 million. From the information gathered earlier, the more perceptive individuals could deduce that this number just exceeded the limit of the Solitary Moon Dynasty. In other words, at this price, the Solitary Moon Dynasty would no longer be able to continue bidding. The entire hall fell silent. They had just witnessed a different kind of competition, one that had nothing to do with power, but everything to do with wealth. Mu Lin's face grew increasingly grim. In such auctions, the financial resources one could mobilize were often a closely guarded secret. He hadn't anticipated that Feng Song would have such inside information. Feng Song's bid was only 1 million higher than Mu Lin's limit, but that 1 million was enough to become the straw that broke the camel's back. It would be nearly impossible for Mu Lin to find another way to outbid Feng Song. Similarly, Imo Fawn of the Blazing Fire Dynasty looked equally troubled. Feng Song's move had effectively cut off all their avenues of victory. Feng Song smiled as he looked at Mu Lin and Imo Fawn, their faces dark with frustration but unable to say anything in response. His gaze then shifted towards Song Tai on the auction stage, and he chuckled, Master Song. It seems that no one here can offer a higher bid than me. Looks like this heaven-tier spiritual treasure will fall into the hands of my Stormcloud dynasty. Mu Lin's face turned ashen, and he clenched his fists tightly. However, in the end, he could only let out a dejected sigh. Song Tai maintained his calm expression, sweeping his gaze across the hall. Just as he was about to announce the winner, his eyes landed on a figure rising from the back amidst a wave of astonished murmurs. Lin Dong had stood up. The sudden commotion from behind caused Feng Song to frown. He turned around, his expression darkening as he glared at Lin Dong and sneered, What? You want to join this bidding war too? Are you sure a mere person from a lower dynasty like you has that many nirvana pills? The attention of the entire auction hall shifted to Lin Dong, with many gazing at him in suspicion. Though they had seen Lin Dong demonstrate his abilities earlier, the current bid was beyond the means of even the other three super dynasties. Could Lin Dong really compete with the Stormcloud dynasty? 17 million nirvana pills. No matter how much Lin Dong might have gained from the ancient treasury, it seemed impossible for him to gather such an astronomical sum. I don't have that many nirvana pills, Lin Dong said with a smile, unfazed by the numerous eyes watching him. Hearing this, Feng Song's face instantly darkened. He sneered, Lin Dong, do you know where you are? If you're just here to stir up trouble, you might lose your qualification to participate in the 100 Dynasty War. Not that I think you'll live long enough to see it. On the auction stage, Song Tai frowned slightly, staring at Lin Dong. If you can't produce the nirvana pills, sit back down. If you disrupt the auction again, you'll be expelled. Master Song, Lin Dong cupped his hands respectfully. I may not have the nirvana pills, but I wish to offer something else in exchange. Something else? Song Tai was momentarily taken aback, then frowned. If you're offering a substitute, it must be something with an immediately verifiable value. Otherwise, it won't be accepted. Lin Dong chuckled. I believe what I have will interest quite a few people. Ignoring Feng Song's icy glare, Lin Dong raised his hand, and 3 sparkling silver pills appeared in his palm. As soon as these radiant pills were revealed, a rich medicinal fragrance filled the air, catching the attention of many in the auction hall. What is that? On the auction stage, Song Tai's eyes suddenly brightened with an intense gleam, and a rare look of surprise crossed his usually calm face. Calamity-repelling pills, Lin Dong said with a faint smile. They can increase the success rate of a Nirvana stage expert surviving the Nirvana tribulation. He could feel the sudden, explosive shift in attention from the crowd. In the ancient treasury's alchemy chamber, Lin Dong had acquired many rare pills, including 5 calamity-repelling pills. He intended to keep one for himself and one for Little Yin, as consuming more than one would have no further effect. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to trade the remaining 3 for a heaven-tier spiritual treasure. Calamity-repelling pills? The moment they heard the name, Feng Song, Mu Lin, and Mo Fan all showed visible shock. They clearly hadn't expected Lin Dong to possess such a rare and valuable pill. Everyone, if any of you are interested in these calamity-repelling pills, feel free to make an offer. If the total exceeds 17 million, I wouldn't mind parting with them, Lin Dong said with a smile. A hush fell over the auction hall. Like the heaven-tier spiritual treasure, the calamity-repelling pill was a priceless item rarely available on the market. While its exact value was hard to pin down, it was unlikely to be less than 5 million per pill. Many of the higher dynasties exchanged eager glances, clearly tempted. Though they couldn't compete for the heaven-tier spiritual treasure, they might be able to snag one of the calamity-repelling pills. Lin Dong, these pills are usually priced at 6 million each in external auctions. I'll offer you 8 million per pill, for a total of 24 million. How does that sound? Before anyone else could make a bid, a voice rang out, causing several of the dynasties about to speak up to bristle with anger. But as they turned to see who had spoken, their complaints immediately died in their throats, because the speaker was none other than Song Tai, the auctioneer himself. The man who had been overseeing the auction was now making a personal offer to buy Lin Dong's calamity-repelling pills,